then maybe we allow that to some degree. But if we're seeing sustainable conditions where it's not happiness on top, stress on the bottom, and utilization somewhere in between, that's a problem. And so that's what we're looking for. Is happiness the thing that ranks highly most of the time? It should be. And is stress the bottom of the three? And your utilization?
Your business's success depends on relationships. Relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm really excited to connect with Bobby Dutton. Bobby is a professional speaker, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. He's also a licensed commercial pilot and flight instructor for fun. Thriving at the intersection of engineering and art, Dutton created Groove Boston in 2004, built on the statement, music is no longer a spectator sport. His team, now called GBM Six, is about making people happy through legendary events. Bobby's pioneering work on event design has won him awards internationally, and he was voted one of the top 25 young event pros to watch by Special Events magazine. A creative leader and relentless optimist, Dutton has also served on the Search Foundation Board of Directors and on the Board of Governors for the International Live Events Association. Congrats on being voted one of the top 25 young events to watch in events. Oh, let me redo this one. Congrats on being voted one of the top 25 young event pros to watch, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks. And to be fair, I'm not as young as I was when I got the 25 Young Professionals to Watch award, but I'll take it.
That's fair. So I checked out the events that you run, and I love that you have that focus on happiness at events, because I think that happiness metric is one that, especially in the business world, people overlook, and they don't understand how important it is for people to be happy when they're at work or at an event. And it has such a big impact on either the response people have to an event or just their productivity and their experience at work. And before we started recording, you mentioned something that you do with your team that helps maintain happiness for your own internal team. And so I'd love for you to share that process, that metric, and how it has an impact on your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think it's so important to focus on happiness because yes, it's subjective, and yes, it's hard to quantify, but it's really important, because if we don't figure out how to focus on that proactively and objectively, then people are going to focus on the things they can measure, like cost. And then everyone will have the cheapest concert or the cheapest event, but not the best one, because they don't know what that means. And so we've put a lot of time into how to measure that and how to create rules that must be met in order to show that we've got an authentic culture of happiness that we can use sustainably to keep building these events in a way that makes people happy, because that's what we're here to do. Specifically, everybody on our team who gets paid is required to submit weekly metrics. And the weekly metrics are 3 questions from 1 to 5. And it says, how happy are you from 1 to 5? How stressed are you from 1 to 5? And how utilized are you, which means how full is your plate from 1 to 5? And there's also a field just to say, anything else on your mind? Would you like to elaborate on anything? That part's optional, but can help create some context to paint a better picture around these numbers. But I get a report every week, and I'll go in and look at the happiness dashboard and see how the team is doing. And it's funny because you mentioned my pilot stuff, and I have interesting ways of tying airplane thinking into running a business and running an event. And this is a great example of it, because in an airplane, you've got this dashboard called the engine tab. And it's this huge screen of complicated numbers, and it says your manifold pressure, your exhaust temperature, your fuel burn rate, all these things that you might need to look at or adjust. But the key is, if all the needles are in the green and there's nothing yellow or red or flashing at you, the engine's probably okay and will continue to operate. So my team metrics dashboard is the equivalent of my engine tab for this business. And if everything's green, we're okay. We're handling it. We're doing the work, and everybody is in a state that they'll continue to do the work happily, which is great. But when a condition is not okay, that's when we need to make a change. That's when the engine has a problem. And those conditions would be if at any time someone's stress exceeds their happiness, that's a problem. And I think that's interesting because, there will be times in any world where, yeah, you're stressed. It's a busy day or something bad happened or you're dealing with some stuff. It is what it is. And maybe we allow that to some degree. But if we're seeing sustainable conditions where it's not happiness on top, stress on the bottom, and utilization somewhere in between, that's a problem. And so that's what we're looking for. Is happiness the thing that ranks highly most of the time? It should be. And is stress the bottom of the three? And your utilization, you do want to be doing stuff, not nothing, that's no fun, but not too much for too long. And so we watch that, literally look for color codes. And if somebody's happiness is deteriorating, we're seeing trends we're worried about, we're seeing stress get too high and take over, we can see these things and we know that we need to take action. We know exactly where our focus should be internally. So I'll call someone or ask the supervisor to call someone and say, hey, we've got an intern who's super stressed and not very happy. Find out what's going on. And so we do. And when we take that kind of action, the first thing people see is, oh, you really are a happiness company because I'm not fitting in the happiness dream right now. And you saw that as a problem. That actually makes people feel good because this isn't just a tagline, right? This is our culture that we need to protect. And sometimes they say, wow, thanks for asking. Yeah, I got a bad grade on a test, or I've got 12 finals on Saturday at 7 a.m, and that's not great. And okay, that's totally fair. And maybe there's nothing that needs to happen about that, but still offering that support and identifying that as a situation that can't continue is really good. And it feels good to be proactive. And that's what allows us to authentically deliver happiness consistently. And I think that's a big reason why our company has existed for over 20 years and survived the pandemic and everything, because happiness is in demand and we know how to protect it.
I love that what you just shared about how if you just reach out and ask someone, I notice you're stressed, what's going on and how can we help? Even if it's something that isn't related to the business, but just in their life, the fact that you reached out and asked them about that and showed you cared and that you noticed. And maybe it means if they have a huge finals week coming up, and that you might reduce their utilization some to make sure they have more, their bandwidth isn't overly taxed in their entire life, and that way their happiness can stay up or their stress will go down because they know there's not as much being required from them at work during this week because other life events are happening. And I think so many companies see their employees as employees first, and they don't see them as people with lives and other things going on that can cause stress. And they expect people, and a lot of employees expect this of themselves, that they can walk in the office or they go into a work mode and think that the rest of life is not going to come with them.
Right.
And that's just not realistic. And so if you're a company that is dealing with employees that are stressed or and there's a lack of happiness, which I think most companies are dealing with, that there's a lot of people that are stressed out and are unhappy with their work. And I know I saw I think it was Fast Company had some article last week that number has gone up a bunch in this year. And so this sort of check-in thing you make part of the way people get paid. So there's obviously incentive for people to fill out this form. And it sounds like it's not a super time in requirement to do this survey. It's if you check a few boxes and then maybe write a little note. So it's not a huge time suck, but having that dashboard that gives you immediate feedback on who needs some extra attention and just compassion and reaching out to before there's a bigger problem doesn't seem like it'd be super complicated to implement or super expensive, but goes a long way to addressing the problems of like lower productivity and employee churn and better results for the customers because their employees are happier, and all these things that companies are looking to solve to be fairly easily addressed, or at least begin to address with something as simple as just a weekly check-in like you're doing. And so I think it's such an elegant, beautiful solution that if companies want to actually care about solving this problem, then it's not a hard thing to fix.
Not at all. And the key is to make it in the flow. So it's just part of your process of submitting, if you need to submit a reimbursement for mileage or to get paid for working an event. Yeah, it's just part of your housekeeping to go through, and it becomes automatic. The other thing that's interesting is, besides the check-ins for the problems, there are more subtle responses you can have from the information you get from this dashboard, which is, for example, if somebody's plate is full, they're pretty happy, they're not too stressed, but they're at a 5 for utilization. We see that a lot, especially this time of year, because we're getting ready for 20 college concerts in the next 3 weeks. So everybody's pretty busy, as they should be. But if somebody's at a 5 for utilization, I'm not going to ask them to, hey, you want to look into this new technology that could be interesting? They don't. I know that, so I'm not going to ask. So I'm going to skip that email. Or if somebody CCs me on something where they're asking somebody for help or action on something that when their plate is full, maybe I'll drop in and solve it for them real quick if that's something I can help with. And these subtler adjustments go a long way too. And people see that because as you get busier and you report it automatically without even noticing that you were asking for help, you're getting it when you need it, which is cool. And then on the other hand, if your plate's totally empty because you're paid to work, but there's not a lot of shows coming up and your department's kind of, relaxed right now, maybe I'll call and be like, hey, we should do a retreat. You want to look for Airbnbs? Here's an interesting task to fill your time so you don't feel useless. And that's also proactive. So we've got to adjust in big ways and small, but either way, the data is a huge way to figure out what you need to do.
And I love that aspect of, like you mentioned about the utilization option because a lot of the things that end up when someone has a big reaction, something or they burn out or have a big kind of emotional overload and have a big they start screaming or kind of boil over.
Yeah.
It's never less a one thing. It's always a lot of little things that keep eroding their stress level and annoying them. And so having that dashboard metric saying, hey, their plate's full, so you can proactively handle things for them and let them not feel that overload or not have that. Can you add more to the plate when the plate's already full?
Right.
Just prevents a lot of those little added straws, pieces of straw that break the camel's back. You just avoid all those little irritants. And again, yeah, it's a great way also for people to feel for you to be able to get to some of those, we should do the retreat, or a nice to have thing. We don't know who can handle it.
Right.
But if they're already telling you hey, they have the bandwidth for it, then it saves you from having to, again, send an email, wait for a reply, and you can be more proactive because you're getting these constant check-ins, and there's this back and forth communication between leadership and their teams that just doesn't exist in so many companies. It's so many companies are it's a one-way communication. It's all just top down.
Yeah.
And I think that model just doesn't work anymore. And I think and with technology, like you mentioned here, with these dashboards and you can easily plug in this sort of survey to all sorts of different things that employees are already doing. Having that check-in just makes it so much easier to avoid a lot of these tiny irritants that can end up boiling over people that are overwhelmed, or helping you find ways to utilize the strengths and time of people that might feel underappreciated or underused, underworked. So you're getting the most value from your team, and also supporting them when they need support, or just avoiding the overwhelm and burnout that so many companies are dealing with right now, which I think it's such a, always like the elegant, simple solutions that are the most beautiful. And I'm just marveling right now at how, for such a huge problem facing so many companies, such a simple solution that starts with just prioritizing happiness can make such a huge difference. And it's kind of sad that so many companies don't get this.
Yeah, I agree. And I like what you just pointed out, that it's kind of a good way to trust the team, to stay informed and to support them the way they need it without micromanaging. It's not just oblivious leadership that says, do all these things, that's your job, bye. But it's also not saying, all right, what are you doing for this one? Oh, okay, I would have done it differently. Let me see that again. Like, that's not helpful either. It's not scalable or sustainable. So this to me has been the perfect balance of, like, if there's a problem, I got you. I'm aware of it. I see it coming, and we're gonna do something about it. And the most satisfying thing about scaling it is now I'm empowering managers that report to me to manage the people that report to them in the same way. So they've got their dashboard. I've got access to it to poke in, but their job's to manage the dashboard and intervene as needed. And that just shows that this can work at any scale. And I love that. That's cool to see, because events is a place where it's easy to get, abused and overwhelmed and overworked. And we see too much of that in this industry. And we spend all of our time in the higher ed space. All of our clients are colleges, and people working in those spaces are stressed constantly also. So I love that our differentiator in both the special events industry and the higher education world are, we're those people that seem extremely productive, yet happy and able to sustain that and do some really big things. And I love that, because it's shocking to people. They say, didn't you just work 18 hours to do this super complicated show with this dramatic rock star? And we're like, yep, we'll do it 19 more times the next 3 weeks. And they're like, have you slept? And we're like, yeah, we know how to prioritize sleep. We're not doing this 20 hours a day, every day indefinitely. That's not sustainable either. And our metrics would definitely reflect that. But I love that we've figured it out, and it's so satisfying to share that with people, and hopefully show them that there is a way to be productive and happy, and not so stressed that it brings you down.
And I think it also solves the problem that I think a lot of, or the objection that so many leaders have, is that, it takes so much time to listen to your team. It's going to be such a drain on my own bandwidth, and like I won't be able to get anything else done. But by using this sort of check-in system, who needs the attention. You're not just doing like general check-ins in person all the time with every single team member, and you can prioritize who needs the help at any given moment. I'm sure if a company first implements this, there'll be a lot of like stuff in the red. So it might be a little bit initially overwhelming, but as you build the system up and get it working and address those issues, then that requirement on the managers and the leaders' time goes way down, because they'll be able to proactively manage the overwhelm and the stress and the happiness, so that there aren't big fires to put out. There may be a little, like, something smoking over here, let's deal with it right away. And it won't be everything's catastrophized like they're currently dealing with, because they're ignoring things so long until it's, oh my gosh, it's a huge problem.
Right.
So it's such a, I think that's just, for how screwed up so many employer-employee relationships are, this simple fix, once it's applied and given a good chance to work, could be like a magic bullet for so many businesses that are struggling with their teams and their leaders not being able to address what their employees really need to be successful. So Thank you so much for connecting with me today, Bobby. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Bobby, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.